Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for joining us on this advertising webinar. We're very fortunate today to have two special presenters with us. The first is Bob Pierce, and Bob is, well, I'm going to let Bob wants to tell you about Bob.
Good morning, Terry. Always a pleasure. Used Car Dealer Association, Director of Member Services. Done a lot of work with the associations in the last few years. As you know, I was registrar at one time, many years ago. Very interested in this. Thank you for the invitation. Very pleased to be here.
Well, we're really happy, Bob, that you took the time to join us because, you know, the UCDA has a really important voice on these issues, and I think that you have some important insights that you can share too today.
And I think this is a real good opportunity to start the process going forward of getting this message out. There have been a lot of changes in the industry in the last 5 years. It took 10 years to develop them, of course, through the development of new regulations. And more we're seeing through your efforts in enforcement and mine through doing the audits of the stores, we're still not as compliant as we need to be in the industry.
And also joining us today is one of OMVIC's inspectors, Farah Mohammed, and I'll let Farah also introduce herself and a little bit about your background, Farah.
Good morning, everyone. Yes, I am an inspector. Recently became an inspector. Formerly, I was a business standards representative for the Business Standards Department, which specializes in advertising. And before that, I was a complaint handler as well. So I've got a lot of background here at OMVIC since the implementation of the MBDA, the new MBDA, rather.
Thanks. So Bob and Farah are going to be our presenters today. My name's Terry O'Keefe. I'm going to be your moderator. I'm the Director of Communications and Education here at OMVIC. And I'm just going to try and keep things moving along, but it's going to be Bob and Farah presenting our expertise, if you will, today. And just before we start, a little housekeeping here. You will have the opportunity to ask questions during this webinar. And you can see on your screen, you should all have this little box up on your computer screen right now since you've joined the webinar. If you have any questions, please type them into that box and we will try to address them at the end of the webinar. If we're not able to get to your question, we'll turn that over to our business standards team and they will respond to every question that we don't answer at the end of the webinar via email. So I'm going to turn things over to Bob and Farah. Start with the first question, advertisements. That's what we're here for. What are they?
Well, again, you know, Terry, you've turned this one over to me to start, and first of all, I want to tell the folks that if you take a look at the history of advertising and what's happened, it wasn't OMVIC that forced this on us at all. In the early 90s, middle 90s, I was in with the Ontario and Toronto Dealers Association, New Cars, and we developed then the advertising guidelines. We couldn't enforce them, but they were things that the industry recognized that we had a problem. We were much like the airlines. You thought you were buying a $100 ticket, and by the time you got in there and paid the fees, it was a $600 ticket. And so we recognized that we had to put our advertising in front of the people, and this was a voluntary program. It was really the precursor to all of the advertising we're doing today. And in those days, under the old regulations, advertising was anything you did external to the dealership. So the big signs on the glass and the window hangers on the cars weren't covered. And the feeling was there, you went to the dealership. You knew you were going there and you'd get the story when you got there. And when we developed the regs, given that people are now shopping 24 hours a day, it doesn't matter where you put your message. Either billboards or newspapers still or magazines or internet or social media. And I'm going to turn social media over to Farah because I don't have a Facebook page. So, but that's the big change. Now it's everywhere you want to put your message. And the person shopping on a Sunday looking at a window hanger in a car has to know what that all-in price is going to be so there's no surprise when they get there. And that's what we're trying to stop.
Exactly. And you mentioned change, Bob. Over the last couple of years, we've noticed a huge change in social media. So we've got advertisements on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Tumblr, you name it. If it's on the internet, it's still an advertisement. It's an inducement to, in this case, buy or lease a motor vehicle, and you must ensure that your advertisements in any shape or form are compliant.
And I think while we're talking about that, I think Bob's raised a really good point, though, and that is it's any inducement, not just what's in the paper, not just what's on their website or their social media, even those window danglers, as
Yeah,
you call them.
yeah.
That's an advertisement, and it's expected to be compliant with the regulations.
Right.
Dealer identification. When you are advertising a vehicle, your registered name and phone number must be listed in a clear, comprehensible, and prominent fashion. We do appreciate that in some cases you might have some space or time restrictions when you're advertising motor vehicles with a price, and for that, for example, you're advertising in a classified section of a local print publication. We state that at minimum, you must advertise the fact that you are a dealer. If you cannot fit your full dealer name, as well as your registered dealer contact number. For radio broadcasts, if there are space or time limitations, I will get back to that further along in the presentation.
So here's an example of an ad on Kijiji, and as you can say, it says for sale by owner,
right?
Not dealer. There's no dealership name. I know that's hard to read. Trust me, there's no dealership name there. But Bob,
well, again, you take a look at this ad, and I don't believe that the dealer is trying to hide anything. For goodness sakes, when you look at this picture or the next one, where Kijiji has, look what this seller has for sale. He's got a picture of the dealership behind the car. So I don't think there's any surprise to anybody that if you call that number, you're calling a dealer. And the main motivation for doing this, obviously, is that if you call yourself an owner, you don't pay for that advertising Kijiji, and if you're a dealer, you do. So I don't really think this guy really, unless he's not the sharpest knife in the drawer, he's trying to hide anything. He's a dealer.
And you're right. If you see the other arrow pointing to viewers' other ads, there's 7 other vehicles there.
There's
Right.
multiple vehicles being listed there. So from an OMVIC perspective, if our business standards department was looking at this, we'd either think, A, this is a potential curber, or B, it's a dealer trying to avoid paying Kijiji the fees and not identifying his or herself correctly in the advertisement.
And again, if you look at that ad as well, he doesn't identify the tax and licensing are on top of that price in the ad as well.
Well, no, because it doesn't appear to be from a dealer. So.
Again, he kind of shoots himself in the foot, and then you look at the cost of this mistake, which is $15,000.
Exactly. So this the dealer that we used as an example was charged $15,000 for not properly identifying himself as a dealer in his advertisements.
Some of the other things that our members have to be aware of, and you know, government supplied vehicles, the ex-police cars, taxi cabs obviously aren't government, but those types of vehicles are unique in their own way. So if you're advertising those, they clearly, prominently have to be identified taxi, limos, police, emergency services vehicles in your ad. Not that when you went to see the car you probably couldn't tell anyway, but again, in the ad, it's got to be clear and prominent that they're taxis and police vehicles.
Exactly. And notice that skull and crossbone in the top right corner. That's to indicate that these disclosures are not only important in advertisements, but on the contract upon selling the motor vehicle as well. Alongside with the past use, daily rental disclosure is very important. If the vehicle has not been subsequently owned by a consumer, you must clearly and prominently identify the fact that it's a daily rental.
And again, in this one, this isn't something that's new to these regulations, and I hate like sounding like the oldest dog in the kennel, but the daily rental disclosure has been required in Ontario since 1989. So that's not something this industry should have a problem with doing. We've known this has been necessary for a very long time.
And I think it's fair to say, and I'll ask Farah because she's previous from our business standards team, non-compliance with disclosing daily rentals in advertising and on contracts is still one of the areas where we see far too high a level of non-compliance.
Far too high, as well as we take a zero tolerance with regards to non-compliance in this area. So if you're not disclosing your daily rental disclosures in your advertisements and on your contracts, we do take zero tolerance, and you will be disciplined accordingly.
The other thing I think this is more sort of related to the new car side of the business, obviously, and it's something that is pretty misunderstood. If one of our members, for example, has got a demo in 2015 and he sells it, or she sells it, that vehicle is used. And there are a number of dealers where I've seen they actually sell them on the new car bill of sale because That's what the manufacturers want, and we quite frankly don't care what they want. So for the law, that current model year vehicle or one previous has to be identified as a used vehicle, and the word used appears in the ad, and I think OMVIC has also tolerated the term pre-owned.
Yep.
Yeah, as long as it indicates that the vehicle is used.
Exactly. You could say previously owned as a demonstrator, used demonstrator, so long as you indicate that this vehicle is not new. So what is a new motor vehicle? A new motor vehicle, as defined through the Highway Traffic Act, is a vehicle which no permit has been issued under Section 7 particularly. We do get a lot of dealers saying, well, this vehicle is a new vehicle. I sold it to a customer. The customer then canceled the contract, so there's no mileage, no nothing. The Ministry of Transportation has a 14-day clause. So if there is a cancellation that has taken place on a new motor vehicle, you want to ensure that that's rectified within the 14 days and not registered.
It gets transferred back into the dealership's name in that 14 days.
And of course, you gave me the easy one. A used vehicle means any vehicle that's not a new one and essentially has been registered, delivered, and used by the consumer or another business to make it a used car. And you really have to be very careful with the demonstrators and what they're being used for in the dealerships of when they trip over that line for being a used vehicle.
Vehicle availability. So when you're advertising a vehicle for sale, that vehicle must be available at the time the advertisement is published. If the vehicle requires a factory order, this must be prominently disclosed in the advertisement. So saying factory order required prominently in a bubble, that is okay. If it's an incoming model, that too must be disclosed in the body of the advertisement. And if there's a limited supply, this too must be identified. So how many vehicles are available at the advertised price? And this is a prohibited term, limited supply, in our standards of business practice, more so in the sense that if you're not going to substantiate what makes that vehicle limited, you can't just say limited amount.
And again, on the vehicles that are incoming, that's particularly important, especially if the Canadian dollar ever gets back to zero again, and we get more of the cars coming to the U.S. Some of our members, very good members, bring cars up, and they clearly have to let the customer know that vehicle's not on the lot, and that stops, again, that surprise of many surprises a consumer can get. They take the trouble to go to the dealership, they want to see the car, you advertise it, and it won't be there for a week. So one of them has made some very good strides at saying, vehicles incoming will be here in a week as part of the sale process.
This is to avoid any consumer confusion, bait and switch complaints, for example. So, I mean, you are looking out for yourself when you're advertising correctly as well.
And Farah, if the vehicle is incoming, there would be nothing wrong with saying vehicle incoming, please contact us for details.
Exactly.
Exactly. And you're kind of letting me deal with the big one.
This is the big one,
the all-in pricing. Now as I teach the OMVIC course for the last year, this is the one that would seem to have the most confusion, and I really can't really understand why it's confusing at all. Again, you go back to prior to the regulations a few years or decades ago. A dealer bought a car, he knew what it cost him, knew the costs, put in his markup or his lot pack in the old days, then he knew what he would sell it for as a price. We've created any kind of confusion in the industry with how we choose to sell some of the options. So all in, the word is all. It's all there. There's no surprise. The customer doesn't walk in the door thinking the car is $14.95 and finds out, like those airline tickets, it's $16.95. The confusion comes into is some of the products we choose to put on the car, and etching or nitro tires or the security stuff, which is the theft deterrent stuff. That stuff we used to sell, we do it now, we put them on the lot because it's good for protection on the lot, and now the customers expect it and we want them to pay for it. That's all got to be in the all-in price. And if a dealer chooses to sell that and give the customer an option, then it doesn't have to be in the all-in price.
But if they've pre-installed it?
If they pre-installed it and they expect the customer to buy it and pay, then it's got to be in the all-in price. And we're seeing some into your zero tolerance rule, and we may not agree with it. Our members may think it's a little chintzy, but $300 or $400 or $500 over that advertised price, and they're going to discipline over it and they're paying $5,000 penalties for it. And the customer doesn't need that surprise. You told them it's an all-in price. It's got to be all in.
And I think you've raised an important point, Bob, because, we're trying to educate consumers about all-in pricing.
Right.
Because, all-in pricing, it's not just about transparency. It's about a level playing field for dealers, and it's about building trust in the industry, too, so that there's no hidden surprises and that they can believe the price that they see in that ad.
Exactly. And it's the hidden surprise is the one we have to get away from. And we are. And this is working. Slowly and surely, the industry is grasping this whole concept that the customer doesn't get this conversation about these extra fees. That's not going to be part of the negotiation. You still negotiate the car if you want, but this pricing isn't going to be part of the discussion.
Now, just something I wanted to mention. I've asked Sarah to back us up one slide here. All these fees have to be included in any advertised price. And to go back to what you talked about earlier, that includes the newspaper, the website, the little window danglers hanging from the rearview mirror.
Right. That's right.
All of those have to have an all-in price, except for HST and licensing. HST and licensing don't have to be included in the all-in price, but there's one caveat there, and I'll let Farah address that.
So long as you clearly and prominently disclose that HST and licensing are additional. Often we see that there's a little asterisk next to the vehicle price, referring the consumer down to the fine print. As a best practice, we always say that it's best that you say plus HST and licensing right next to the vehicle price so that there is no question about it. The Act particularly states that if it does not say plus HST, it's automatically assumed that the HST is included in the price that you're advertising. So be sure that you advertise plus HST. We are well aware that in the retail industry, you're going to charge taxes on the items that you sell, but the Act specifically states say plus HST so that there are no surprises to the consumers.
And that's okay. And one of the things on that list, and this isn't obviously some part of this discussion, really is something in the future we'd like to see, is the OMVIC fee. It's part of the taxes, the licensing, and the OMVIC fee. The dealer doesn't get that money anyway, and the consumer has to understand that's not something that's part of it. That's mandatory, and that's got to go to OMVIC for the regulatory work. We'd like to see that out as well.
Yeah. But just for clarification,
it's not.
It's not.
I know. That's what we want to see.
Today,
so include your $5 OMVIC fee in your all-in price.
But we don't always agree, Terry. We're not always going to agree on this stuff. Okay.
But this is one of those all-in pricing. We often hear it's confusing, and in my mind, it's not. There's no hidden fees. There's no surprises. The advertised price is the drive-away price. It's the price of the vehicle plus HST and licensing. It's really that simple.
And if the industry is going to have these extra charges that are either optional or mandatory, then the industry has to learn to adapt to the all-in pricing laws and make them work. And that's where I sit on this.
So what happens if you're not in compliance with all-in pricing? Here's an example. OMVIC can issue a dealer to cease use of that advertisement immediately. This order can be appealed through the License Appeal Tribunal, but it does take effect immediately. So that advertisement must be pulled at your earliest convenience so that it's no longer harmful to the public. So here's an example. This one particular dealer advertised a vehicle that the price was not all in. The following week, the dealer had to issue a retraction as part of the cease and desist in the same publication. Had to be the same size of equal prominence, and they had to state what the mistake was and what the correct all-in price of that vehicle was.
And just before we go, the dealer's actually named in this ad, and I want you to know that we're not using this to try and embarrass this dealership. This is obviously a public newspaper, and that's why we're showing it. But this was as Farah said, this was the correction that they had to publish to address the non-all-in price.
If a dealer is found in breach of the advertising rules and regulations, they may also have to submit all of their advertising to OMVIC for pre-approval for a period of up to 2 years. So your window danglers, your online advertisements, if you want to paint a price on a vehicle in front of your dealership, that all has to be approved by OMVIC if you're not in compliance with all-in pricing. Dealers may also face charges through the provincial offenses. You might be sent or issued a notice of complaint, which triggers the disciplinary process, or you might receive a proposal to revoke or suspend your OMVIC registration, period.
And I think it's fair to say currently the discipline process is probably most often used to address advertising compliance issues.
Yes, yes.
And then this slide, I think, is an interesting one, and a lot of our members simply don't understand or don't realize that when you run afoul of the laws and you are non-compliant and you run before disciplinary or any other thing you do, it's going to be made public. And I know after teaching the class, there's a sort of a surprise. You mean they're going to tell everybody about this? And they are, and they have to. The MVDA makes it very clear that it's a mandatory release to the public if it's in the public's interest to know. And I know you do it in some very big cases because the public have a right to know as to what's going on in the dealership. And we had the Mazda store north of the city was one of them. But again, our members have to understand if you run afoul, it's going to be made public.
And Bob, I think that's a really good point, and thank you for bringing it up, because sometimes dealers think, oh, that's OMVIC being mean-spirited, that we're making this information public and all these discipline decisions are posted on our website. But we must. The law applies to us too, and the Motor Vehicle Dealers Act, Section 27, tells OMVIC that it must make all this information public.
Yeah. Okay.
So a little bit about the discipline process. The discipline process is used when, in this case, a dealer or salesperson is in breach of the Code of Ethics. Regarding advertising, particularly Section 4 and 9 of the Code of Ethics, referring to disclosure in marketing and professionalism. So you want to be sure that when you're advertising, it's in line with our Code of Ethics, standards and business practice, and our rules and regulations.
So something that I'd like to talk about here. We've talked about all the advertising regulations now, and I know not everyone likes regulations, and sometimes we hear from people that this is all about consumer transparency, and yes, it is about consumer transparency. It's about no hidden fees and surprises and building trust in the industry. But that's not the only thing that the all-in pricing is about. It's about creating a level playing field for all dealers who advertise. And so here's an example that I'd like to use to try and demonstrate this.
And before you get into it, Terry, and I think it's interesting you've got this illustration up, and I spent a lot of time at the auction. So you're going to portray this as the two cars are relatively the same. And I look at the auction, unless there's a major disclosure made, these cars are going to sell. If Honda, for example, puts these two on a lease return lane at the auction, they're going to sell within hundreds of dollars of each other. There's no good reason two cars are going to be $2,000 or $3,000 apart in pricing in advertising these cars unless there's a reason or unless the dealer's got some other ideas, and you're going to see that now.
Yeah.
Obviously, you're going to start it now.
Yeah, so, well, here's the example about creating a level playing field. So Bob and Farah, they're both dealers, and they both go to the auction today, and they both buy 2009 Honda Accord. The cars are nearly identical, same mileage, same color, equipment, condition. Both paid $8,500 for their Accords, and both Farah and Bob are going to advertise these cars in this weekend's paper. So Bob advertises his car at $12,250. He paid $8,500 for it, but I mean, he's a business. He's got to turn a profit. He's got staff to pay. He's got to pay for his building. He's got to keep the lights on. So he's advertising his car for $12,250. You've got to recondition the car. Right. You've got expenses, and this is what you're going to advertise it for. And that's Bob's price. You can see an all-in price $12,250. Farah advertises her car for $8,500. That's the price she paid for it. So where do you think consumers are going to shop when they see those two ads in the same paper?
And this is a complaint, not so much in the last couple of years, but early days in the regulations we would get all the time from our members. I'm advertising, I'm compliant with this, and down the street they're not doing it. And this is what I've routinely said is the surprise the consumer gets when they walk in the door.
Yeah.
They respond to the $8,500 car. That's the one you see. Every person in their right mind is going to say, okay, there are two cars. I'm going to go see the $8,500 car
That's
first.
the dealer who has the competitive advantage, right?
That's right. But what the consumer didn't know is this.
Or now they find out.
They've got when they get to the store, they find out that Farah had a $1,500 administration fee. We're not encouraging dealers to have $1,500 administration fees, but Farah had a $1,500 administration fee. She charged $750 for a safety, even if the car didn't need a light bulb. She charged a $1,500 pre-delivery expense, whatever she had come up with for that, and the total price of the car was $12,250. It was the same price as yours, Bob, but the consumer didn't know that when they saw that non-compliant ad because it wasn't an all-in price, and that's not fair to the consumer, and it's not fair to Bob's dealership who's advertising correctly. And I think it's worth noting that, yes, these are pretty astounding numbers that you're seeing here, but these are actually taken from a dealer here in Toronto in 2009 before all-in pricing, and these were some of the charges that they were putting on bills of sale.
And whether we think that they're realistic or they're not realistic numbers, that is the issue. That's the surprise. You get in and find out that that $8,500 car isn't $8,500 anymore. And again, without sounding too repetitive, it's like the airlines used to be. And they've had to bring theirs into compliance the same way as the car industry has. You get the picture of what the ticket's really going to cost, and this dealer has an unfair advantage if he publicizes or she publicizes $8,500, and then you get there and you get your your $2,000 or $3,000 surprise.
Absolutely.
And we got to stop that. And we are. It's empty.
Often what I do get from dealers when I am informing them of their non-compliances, but Farah, the consumer knew. The consumer signed the sales final knowing that they were paying this price. But sometimes consumers are not aware of all-in pricing when they are able to be protected under these legislations.
Mm-hmm. And I think, Farah, that's a really good point, and we've done actually some surveying, and we know that 75% of Ontarians still don't know all-in pricing is the law. We're trying to address that through some of our consumer awareness programs, because we hope that if consumers are aware of it and they encounter one of those dealers who is not compliant with all-in pricing, that they will help address that issue right then and there. But we still have, OMVIC still has a lot more to do to educate consumers about this.
Terry, don't feel bad. We've had a compensation fund in place for a long time. The average consumer doesn't know that if they buy a car from a dealer, they are protected up $45,000. You have a long job to do to educate the public on this stuff. And the comp fund came in '86. So,
when you're advertising a cost of credit, we've gone through all-in pricing, but what about when you're advertising a credit offer or a lease offer? When you're advertising a credit offer, the interest rate or the amount and the cash price must be prominently disclosed in the body of the advertisement. The term, APR, cost of borrowing, and cash price must be identified. We do appreciate that sometimes you advertise more than one offer. If that's the case, then a representative example of the cost of borrowing will suffice so long as it's listed in a clear, comprehensible, and prominent fashion, and it is acceptable to have that cost of borrowing example in the fine print of the advertisement.
And just for purposes here, the cost of borrowing was included in this ad, but we cropped the ad to make it fit on into our presentation here. So if you're wondering why it's not there, it was. We just had to make it fit.
And with regards to lease offers, you must identify the term, the payment, the APR, any amounts of upfront payments, and if there are kilometer allowances, this too must be clearly and prominently identified in the body of the lease advertisement. So the difference here is that you don't see the requirement for the cash purchase price, really. So when you are looking at advertisements and you're trying to distinguish whether or not it is a lease or finance, look for that cash purchase price.
And continuing, I guess, with extended warranties, then if an ad says an extended warranty is included, the average consumer looks at that and says, okay, I got a 12-month warranty. They don't really get the terms and conditions of the warranty until they get to the dealership to see the car. So the regulation clearly states you have to in the ad, disclose the term of the warranty and any claim amount, so that you might think you're getting a warranty that's a really good deal, but it's only got a $1,000 claim amount, and the deductible's $100. So in fact, you're only getting $900 on your $4,000 engine job. That sort of separates out the good, better warranties from the less sort of comprehensive ones. Again, on as-is vehicles, another issue changed in the regulations on this of what an as-is vehicle is, and it really does separate the two cars between a car sold with a safety and what an as-is vehicle truly is under the new regulations. And they are not vehicles that just need a safety. So the average consumer's got to understand when they see this term in their advertising, these vehicles are one step away from the boneyard. I mean, They are buying. They have to understand they're buying these as fixer-uppers. They're not roadworthy. They're not mechanically sound. They're not guaranteed. It's going to cost a lot of money, and they have to understand it's going to cost a lot of money. The term used previously is, "Oh yeah, we're selling that one as is." That term's no longer allowed to be in the ads.
Well, I mean, if a vehicle is being sold as is, that entire disclosure statement that you see there, and it's very similar to the one on the contract, that has to be included in the advertisement verbatim.
Yeah, it can't be modified at all.
And again, the consumer has to understand that when they get to the dealership.
Yeah.
To me, that's as important as the ad.
You can't simply state
it's as is. That's right.
Exactly. Yeah. If you're looking for the verbiage, you can look at, I believe, an April 2010 bulletin, and you will have the exact verbiage that we're looking for to be disclosed when you're advertising as-is vehicles. And just remember that when you are selling an as-is vehicle, the important disclosures must still be made on the contract.
And that's something that until recently we just haven't sort of understood in the industry. That car sold as is, advertised as is, sold as is, does not escape the mandatory 21 disclosures under the disclosure regulations.
Exactly.
So and I was at a class yesterday was explaining that you sell a car as is, you have to tell them now specifically why it's as is. Mm-hmm. The mechanical repairs. Some could be safety, some could not. But right down to the holes in the frames, and that's why this car is an as-is car. Yeah. It's a specific disclosure requirement. So that's something we need to learn in the industry. That's got to get out there better than it is right now.
And then we've got unfit vehicles too.
Yeah, and again, that's the confusion of saying that as-is vehicle, all you need to do is put a safety on it. And it truly is two separate cars. This isn't something the industry really sort of, I don't particularly like this that much, but it is a disclosure requirement. This verbiage, if you're selling a car without a safety or an e-test, clearly has to be specific. This verbiage and not the X's. The dollar values actually have to be there, okay? so that the customer understands this car hasn't yet undergone its safety. Doesn't mean it's unsafe. It's not drivable right now, or maybe shouldn't be. But it's not an as-is car. They are distinct, separate and distinct.
That's a really good point. This is not a vehicle being sold as is. This is a vehicle that is being advertised without the cost of the safety and e-test. And again, if you're going to advertise vehicles unfit, this exact disclosure statement, this exact wording has to be used. The vehicle is not drivable, not certified, and not e-tested. Certification and e-testing available for, and you state the price. It can't be a range.
Exactly.
It has to be the actual cost. It can't be from $199 to $799. It has to be the actual cost of certification and e-testing.
And again, all the disclosures have to be made still. That car being sold in this way still does not escape the disclosure requirements under the Act.
That's correct.
The use of stock photos in advertisements, we issued a bulletin, I believe, last week regarding this exact issue. If an advertisement includes a picture, but the picture isn't of the actual vehicle, the picture must accurately reflect the make, model, trim level, and model year, and the condition of the vehicle. This is with regards to used vehicles, of course. If you do have the actual image of the vehicle, we do say to use that actual image rather than get an image online or from the manufacturer. But what about new vehicles? Often we have dealers who pay into a program to have advertisements placed by or on behalf of them, and the use of the image is for a sport model, and the price that you're advertising is for a base model. We appreciate that sometimes when it comes to new vehicle advertising, you can't get your hands on the physical vehicle to take an image. So we do state that if you're going to advertise an image of a higher model, you must advertise the all-in price of that image right next to the vehicle. It doesn't have to be more prominent than the base model price that you are in fact advertising, however.
So just in this particular example, you can see the $19,995 price is there, but just beside the vehicle it actually says 2015 Chrysler 200C shown $29,790. So that it's very clear this isn't what the car for $19,995 is going to look like.
Exactly.
So, quick question. Is this advertisement compliant?
Only if you have really good eyes.
Can you turn the monitor around so that I can read the fine print?
Last I looked, we kind of read horizontal, don't we?
Well, the funny thing is, it's actually a trick question because the question of compliance doesn't come into it. This is not a dealer ad. This is an advertisement placed by the manufacturer, and manufacturers are not bound by the Motor Vehicle Dealers Act. So there's not even a question of compliance, and this causes a lot of confusion for consumers, because consumers are slowly learning about all-in pricing and these regulations, and they see the manufacturer's advertisement, and it might not necessarily be an all-in price. And when they go to the dealership, they're asking the dealership, why are there all these additional fees? And the dealer, the poor dealer, and I mean that, the poor dealer now has to try to explain to the consumer, you're right about all-in pricing, but that wasn't my advertisement. That was placed by the manufacturer. So we recognize that there is confusion sometimes for consumers in this area, and we're trying to educate consumers as well that, you know, manufacturers aren't bound by these regulations. Many do voluntarily try to include some of the fees, the freight, PDI, things like that in their advertising. We're making some strides that way, but they're simply not bound by our regulations.
And this is one issue that I think the folks should understand. Both the associations, the new, the used, and OMVIC agree. We have to put as much pressure as we can on the government to remove that exemption for the manufacturers for the purpose of advertising. It's too confusing. The customer walks in the store with the manufacturer's ad for $19.95, and the dealer's all-in price is $21,000, and that's the confusion. And you know, you turn it back to the ad where it's got stock photos. We've got routinely new car dealers that are using the manufacturer's advertising. They put their names at the bottom of it, and simply they can't use that stock photo because, one, there's two prices, and two, that truck, when I saw one recently, and I told the person who sent it, they can't do it because the truck had all sorts of features that were not included in the price. And she said, well, I got it from the manufacturer. So we've got to continue that effort to get the government to change that exemption for the purpose of advertising.
And you did mention that sometimes dealers do tag their name to these manufacturer advertisements, but what they aren't aware of is that the fine print to those manufacturer advertisements sometimes say plus OMVIC fee, plus admin fee, plus your firstborn child. You know, sometimes dealers don't read the fine print to what they're putting their name to. So be sure that if you're going to tag your name to an advertisement, that advertisement is compliant. And
I agree with her, because in that vertical disclosure and that manufacturer's ad in there are all the details that nobody can read.
Yes.
And nobody does bother reading it anyway. So it's lost.
Very true. Third-party advertising. So if you are utilizing a marketing company, if you're paying into an advertising program through the manufacturer, at the end of the day, the dealer holds full responsibility to the advertisements that are being placed by or on behalf of the dealership. So if you're using an advertising agency, if you're advertising online through a DAA, through a manufacturer, be sure to exercise due diligence. You know, have your marketers chime into one of these webinars, call OMVIC, call our business standards department if they're ever in doubt before publishing an advertisement by or on behalf of your dealership.
Pop quiz. Bob.
No.
Are these ads compliant? Well,
No.
Let's start with this one. Okay.
Again, this goes back to when we started out the presentation today on the dealership's grounds. There's this vehicle. Somebody pulls over, takes a look at $32,880. What they don't know is what exactly that admin fee is. So that can range between $300 and $600 or $700, perhaps. I don't know, and which changes that price dramatically, and that's the surprise. And that's what makes this ad illegal.
That's right. You can't say plus admin. Even if it's spelled out what the admin fee is, it can't do that. The administration fee has to be included.
And that's why this isn't that complicated there. It really can't be that complicated for our industry to see this.
Okay, Farah, how about this one? Is it compliant?
I'm going to have to say no. I don't see a cash purchase price, so I don't know if this is a lease or a finance offer. I'm going to assume that it's a finance offer.
It is, Ben. You're right. It's missing the cash purchase price. Okay, Bob, we're back over to you for this one.
Oh, this one just is a good chuckle.
I love this one.
So do I do. License fees. All prices are valid until November, whatever. Vehicles noted with as is are sold as is. Kind of like saying vehicles sold as blue vehicles will be sold as blue vehicles. And again, To quote a friend of mine in our industry, and he said one of the rules he has is if you can't put something people understand, hire a writer. So it's not compliant. You would require the entire as-is disclosure, identify the vehicles that are as-is, and again, that full prominent disclosure of an as-is vehicle. This is someone who didn't get the memo.
And this goes to exactly what both of you were talking about just 2 seconds ago. This is a dealer. We blanked out the dealer's name in the white there, but this is a dealer who has chosen to use the manufacturer's template for their ad. And as you can read, Farah, I'll turn this over to you to pick up right here. Prices do not include?
Do not include fuel fill charges of up to $100, admin fee of $3.99, security package $2.99, or PDI of $3.99, license or applicable taxes. Moving back to the fuel fee, I do get a lot of questions with regards to that. That is not allowed. You must include the cost for fuel in the price that you're advertising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, if you add all those up there, that's $1,000 added to the price of the vehicle.
That's right.
I don't know about you, but $1,000 is enough of a surprise to me to walk out.
Yeah. And this next one.
Oh, that's me.
Pick it up right here. Today, all pricing.
Yeah. See, it's even small for my little, administration, licensing, and taxes. And again, it's not clear, prominent in the ad what's included, and not including that administration price in the car it's going to cost you.
That's right. You can't exclude any fee. You can simply state plus HST and license.
And you can't have it that small.
And I think this one is for Farah.
This one's another one. Without that cash purchase price, where is it?
I think the cash purchase price is in the tiny, tiny print down here.
Can we zoom?
No.
So I'm going to say this isn't clear, comprehensible, and prominently disclosed. Again, you've got your payment, you've got your APR, you've got your term, but the cash purchase price isn't prominently identified in the body of the advertisement.
And here's the last two that we're going to have a look at. Bob, we'll go to this one on the left for you.
All-inclusive pricing, just add the tax, licensing, and the fuel, which Farah's already talked about. So the fuel's got to be in that all-in price.
And we've got one on the right here, Facebook advertisement. Prices exclude taxes and transfer. OMVIC regulations state that we must declare vehicles sold unfit as possibly unworthy for the road or may need extensive repairs to meet Ontario certification requirements.
We haven't got enough time to tell you how bad that is.
I think that they mean that this is an unfit vehicle. I think
it's an as-is vehicle.
Yeah.
We don't know. We just don't have enough time to make adequate.
Exactly.
But
so
if it is unfit, there's a specific unfit disclosure that has to be used. If it is as-is, there's a specific as-is disclosure that has to be used. Both of those disclosure statements, if you don't have them, are available on our website. We're going to show resources for that in just a few minutes. But it has to be the exact wording.
Exactly. So if this was an unfit vehicle, this vehicle is not drivable, not certified, not e-tested, certification and e-testing available for X amount of dollars. Throughout this presentation, you've heard both Bob and myself refer to the Code of Ethics. The Code of Ethics, Section 4, is particular to disclosure and marketing and states that dealers and salespeople must be clear and truthful in describing a vehicle, products, services, programs, and prices. Advertising must be legal, decent, ethical, and truthful. So if you were to be in violation of the Code of Ethics regarding marketing, you would probably receive a notice of complaint, which then triggers the disciplinary process. Our standards of business practice, Section 4, again, also gives you more of an in-depth understanding, real-life examples of our Code of Ethics, our regulations, what OMVIC expects of dealers. And we've got a list of prohibited terms as well. They're restricted and prohibited. So not to say that you can't use all or any of these terms, but if you insist on using these terms, you must be able to substantiate why you're using these terms. So, for example, all-inclusive. You can state that, but you must be able to substantiate that you are, in fact, advertising an all-inclusive price. If you're advertising a limited supply, like I said beforehand, you must indicate how many vehicles are available for the advertised price if you insist on saying limited supply.
And actually, just sort of point on that last one, that's an example of where that slide came from. The advertising guidelines developed long before by the industry. We developed those guidelines of things we recognized couldn't be said in the industry and put that in that the booklet long before this became law. Some of those terms are cool. By the way, if you're advertising something free, I'll be over to get one.
Ongoing enforcement. We are enforcing our advertising rules and regulations constantly. So whether it be through provincial offenses and dealers fined up to $12,500 for non-compliant advertising, or if it's through the disciplinary process and being fined $18,000 and upwards for not being in compliance with all-in pricing. We did a Kijiji sweep as well in 2013 where 85 dealers were charged for non-compliant advertisements under the Provincial Offences Act.
And I didn't really want to talk about the fines and pricing. I think one of the jobs that I enjoy the most is teaching the class and going into the dealerships. And the easy fix for everything you've seen as we've gone through this presentation in the industry is that the managers who are responsible for the advertising and that manager who's signing the bill of sale, before they sign it and accept the deal as a valid sales final, they've got to take a couple of minutes to take a look at that price that the vehicle's selling for, to take a look at the disclosures on the bill of sale before they sign the bill, and don't sign it unless it does. We can fix this problem without the fine structure. We've got to stop that revolving door in the industry of fines, then they take the course, then they learn it, they go back, somebody changes, moves to another dealership, and they get another inspection, they get another fine. That door has to stop. We've got to take the time in the industry to check this stuff before the car goes off the lot. And we can fix all in pricing.
Or before the ad gets published.
Well, it's before the car gets sold. I mean, you put the price in the thing. If somebody's going to take a look at, bring up the ad on whatever site you're using, there's the price, there's the subtotal, it's wrong, we're not delivering this car until the bill of sale matches that. We can fix this. And we have to. It's simple.
So throughout this presentation, you've heard both Bob and myself say CCP, or clear, comprehensible, and prominent. So, I mean, you can read this slide, and clearly it reads.
Or maybe you can't read this slide. I think it says vertical fine print is not CCP.
If you look at the right-hand side of this slide, you can see that we have given you an example of vertical fine print. Vertical fine print is not considered clear, comprehensible, and prominent. So don't utilize vertical fine print when you're advertising, especially in print publications. When you're advertising and your disclosures must be clear, comprehensible, and prominent, it must be easily readable. If you're referring to a local publication, at minimal, your disclosures cannot be less than the classified font in that local publication.
Now we're just getting towards the end of our presentation this morning, and what we'd like to do is just to run through some best practices. This is not the way you must do it, and the regulations don't say you have to do it this way, but these are some ideas from us and from Bob that will help you ensure compliance with the regulations that we've been talking about.
Exactly. So like I mentioned before, although you can say plus HST and licensing in addition to the price that you're advertising, don't put it elsewhere on the page. Put it right next to the price that you're advertising so that there are no questions about it, especially with regards to issues regarding prominence, right? And if you're advertising a credit offer, prominently display the cash price and interest rate in the body of the advertisement right next to the vehicle that you're advertising. For as-is and unfit statements, put them in the body of the advertisement. Like you can see in this image right here, it says special as-is vehicles, 2 arrows pointing towards the 2 vehicles that are considered as-is, and the appropriate as-is statement prominently disclosed right below. And here you see that this vehicle is a former daily rental, and it's prominently disclosed right above the cash purchase price. If you look at this Kijiji advertisement on the left-hand side, it says placed by a dealer. That's what we want to see. You're paying your Kijiji fees, good to go. And the purchase price must be there. But here you see that it says please contact that is okay. You do not have to advertise a price for a vehicle. You can say, please contact. And if you're advertising a used vehicle, of course, try your best to use the actual photo of the vehicle rather than getting an image from elsewhere.
And just to mention to those of you watching, I also want to point out that we've cropped this ad. The dealer's full name was included and phone number was included in the body of the advertisement.
And if you're advertising a vehicle for a price, that price must be available to everyone. Often what we've been seeing, I'd say within the last 3 years, is internet price or get an e-price or internet price versus e-price. That price that you're advertising must be the price that is available to everyone. To suggest that there's another price out there is misleading. So you want to advertise one price. We do appreciate that sometimes there are rebates in place. So for example, a $1,000 Costco rebate. If you insist on showing the price for Costco members, that price cannot exceed the font size of the all-in price that is available to everyone.
And again, if there's two prices, then it really complicates the issue for all-in pricing.
Exactly.
So that's the two-price advertising is something we have to stay away from in this industry. I don't think I've ever seen an ad that says, click here for an e-price on a car. I don't think I've seen one. So.
Oh, wait, they do exist.
Oh, they exist.
All right.
So a few reminders, you cannot guarantee a trade-in allowance. So when you are inviting the public to bring in their trades, you can invite them to bring in their trades, but do not put a dollar amount to those trades.
That, to be candid, I don't think I've seen a guaranteed trade-in. That was a common term 10 years ago. But again, that's where the industry has shifted gears out of that standards of business practices and terms like guaranteed. That's all. We've evolved past that anyway.
It doesn't happen. It's not. You're right. It's not near as common as it used to be, and we're hoping that the compliance with all-in pricing is going to go that same way.
It's interesting. Your next 2 points, though, on MSRP advertising and comparing it to either new cars compared to selling price for new and MSRP or selling price to used to MSRP are covered by obviously the provincial legislation, but also covered by the federal legislation, and are completely prohibited in our industry. Simply put, the MSRP is not what we sell the majority of our vehicles for. So you can't make that comparison. And that's been around, again, since as long as I was provincial registrar. Okay. There's nothing new to OMVIC on that one. And we still I had a question yesterday on it. Why can't we do it?
No. Well, the MSRP doesn't include all of the dealer-specific fees, right? When you're advertising a vehicle and you want to show a savings, and in comparison to the MSRP, you must be ready and willing to also identify what the average selling price of that vehicle is as well, because comparing your savings to the MSRP unnaturally inflates the true savings that a customer will enjoy. So again, if you're going to advertise savings, you want to show the MSRP and the average selling price that your dealer would regularly sell that vehicle for. With regards to radio broadcast, at the beginning of this presentation I said I'd get back to it, and I will be. Radio broadcast, we do appreciate that you sometimes have significant time restraints to get all of your disclosures out there. We recognize that and we appreciate that, so we do state that if you do have limitations, if you're faced with limitations, you must have a 24-hour reference that a customer can refer to get the important information. So a website is something that I often advise dealers to utilize, because rather than a phone number to call, a consumer can access a computer and just visit www.abcmotors/specials to get the additional information.
And I guess this one I wanted to sort of make a comment on, and that's on the warnings. And having read the litany of disciplinary charges that are on the website, and I see how they're laid out. And our members, you got to understand that a warning from OMVIC isn't a bad thing, that's a good thing. And it's an invitation that they go take a look at the processes in the store to see why that happened. The next one's not going to be a warning. And I just had a conversation with a dealer principal, and he had just finished off his disciplinary hearing, and I said, and we were negotiating to try and see what better things he could do to bring it in compliance. And I said, it's not this one you have to worry about. It's the next one. Because if we don't start with the warnings, and it starts with the warnings. when OMVIC gets the disciplinary hearing out to you, it's going to have all of the bulletins they've sent out for you to read. Then they're going to put any warnings or inspections you've had in the past, and then they're going to make a list of all the things you've done that's caused this disciplinary hearing. We've ignored the warning, and that's got to be sort of an opener to say, I have a problem, and if you want to call the UCDA and we can chat, and I do the visits to the dealers to try and fix it at that warning stage, because it gets expensive after that.
And you do that. You will help a dealer put processes in place to try and mitigate any of these problems.
One of the things that's been very successful for us in dealing with our members that have gone through the process is what we call the delivery checklist. And it's only got about 7 points on it. And you go down and check them off, and the manager would do this before the car is approved for delivery, before they sign the bill that says, I'm approving this sale to be a final sale. And one of them is to check your price of your advertising. If you ticked off those simple 7 points, you wouldn't have to worry about any of this that we've talked about today. Or the disclosure requirements that I hope we get to do another time, just on the disclosure requirements, because they are misunderstood as well, even after 5 years. So it's a good opportunity. You get a warning, that's a thank you, and yes, I'll fix it.
And I think the point that Bob has made is important to remember is that if a dealer does find himself going through the discipline process, as you said, every bulletin about that subject, every dealer standard story about that subject, every TNT email about that subject is going to be listed, and they are considered by the discipline panel to have been warnings to the dealer to ensure compliance about that subject.
Exactly. So read the publications. Go to our website. They're at your fingertips. You want to ensure that you're reading the messages that we're relaying to you on a regular basis. Going back to that, we do have these resources readily available on our website. So if you look here and you go to www.omvic.on.ca and you click on dealers/salespersons, click on MVDA requirements, and you'll see that scroll down, and advertising requirements is the first on the list. Very easy to get to.
And you'll notice as you go down that list, advertising as-is vehicles, advertising unfit vehicles. That's where you can find those mandatory disclosure statements if you don't already have them.
Exactly. And our window hangers as well. We have window hanger templates that we do refer dealers to. So if you ever want to advertise a price and hang it in your window, you can use our template. You don't have to use it. You can just use the verbiage that we're using, but it's there to assist you. Again, if you go to our website and click on News and Publications, our dealer bulletins, dealer standards, and TNT resources are readily available there as well. And you can also, if you've got any advertising questions, comments, concerns about another dealer, if you want our team to review your advertisement, if you have any question before you click print or publish, we'd be happy to work with you to achieve compliance. So by all means, you can email marketing_standards@omvic.on.ca, and one of our business standards representatives will be happy to assist you. If it is an advertisement that needs to go to print the next day, give us the benefit of the doubt. We need some time to work with you in case corrections need to be made. So we always encourage dealers to, if there's time sensitivities, to at least give us 48 hours to review and work with you.
And further that, for just and for members out there, obviously, if they've got questions or if they want us to take a look at what they're doing and stuff, that just call the office. We can set that up, especially if they've had warnings.
Exactly.
Because that's the time to put an end to this.
And you have your publications as well that you do send out on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do now is we've gotten quite a number of questions from participants of the webinar. We're going to go through some of them, but as I had mentioned to you, if we don't get to your question in the next 5 minutes or so, the business standards team will follow up with you and send you an email with a response to your inquiry. So the first one, Farah, I'm going to send this one over to you. The question is, what is considered a limited supply?
What is considered a limited supply would be how many vehicles you have available at the price that you're advertising. So if you only have 3 or 2 vehicles available at the price that you're advertising, that's a limited supply. As soon as you publish that advertisement, you're going to get traffic. You're going to get leads on that advertisement that you've published. So you want to make sure that if there is a limited supply, you're stating 3 or 2 or 5 available at this advertised price.
The next question, I think some of these questions we did eventually deal with in the webinar. The next question is, on a window dangler, if that's the sign that's there, and it's offering a finance, biweekly or monthly payment, what other information has to be included on that window dangler? So
you're going to have your payment, your cash purchase price, and your interest rate on the window dangler, but you also have to have your cost of borrowing, all of the financing requirements for advertising must be on your window dangler.
The 5 specific ones that have to be there that show what 0% financing means or 7%.
And we've got the template on our website as well, the actual window danglers that some dealers do utilize. So, and you must say plus taxes and licensing, obviously.
Right. This has to do with vehicles that are being sold unfit. And the question is, what if the cost of the safety hasn't or can't be determined?
Then don't advertise it unfit.
Or a cash price.
Or advertise it with the all-in price to determine what that safety fee is and include it in your all-in price.
Or don't advertise the price.
Exactly.
Just, if you don't know, don't advertise the price, and then none of this matters.
But don't advertise the price with
an XXX on the safety, and I've actually seen that on ads.
We have too.
Yeah, that is just a placeholder.
Exactly.
If you will. There's another question asking if the OMVIC price signs are available. And the answer to that is absolutely yes. You can download them if you go to omvic.on.ca, click on dealers. It's right there on the dealer homepage. They're downloadable. They're fillable PDFs with all the appropriate language on them. There's one for unfit vehicles. There's one for as-is vehicles. There's one for an all-in price vehicle. There's even one for a monthly payment.
Yep.
And you can simply download it, fill it in, print it out, and do it for the next vehicle. It's absolutely free for you to use, and the toolkit is there. Okay, Bob, I'm going to send this one over to you. This has to do with the vehicles that are being advertised as is, and the dealer is asking, what if we can't determine why the car is as is?
You have to determine why the car is as is. Obviously, you've made a decision that you're not going to safety and e-test it and sell it retail. You've decided this car is not something you want on your lot, and an inspection of the car, which is the most important, is going to determine why you've decided to sell that vehicle and it meets the definition of as is. So you've gone to the engine and said, yes, the engine's got this head gasket leak, or you've seen the exhaust system and it's going to have to be completely replaced. If you're going to use this phrase as is and get the customer to sign this term, you have to know what made that car as is. And I can't believe a dealer wouldn't know why they've decided to make this an as-is sale and not a retail sale or just a strict wholesale sale.
I think it's because there's still, or it might be because there's still some misunderstanding of what as-is means.
Well,
because previously, before 2010, when the definition of as-is was enshrined, as-is simply meant there was no warranty to some consumers and to some dealers, but that's not the case today.
And it's not, and I'm the one who wrote the article, and I said it to our members, if you're selling cars as-is to the public, what's in it for you? You're selling a car between 3, 5, 6, whatever it is an as-is piece, you still got to make the mandatory disclosures under the Act. You have to find out what the car needs for repairs because it has a specific disclosure, and there's no money in it. So what's in this for you? One of our cases, a customer came in, made it clear what she wanted the vehicle for. They used oh yeah, we're selling that one as is, and we'll get it over so you can have your safety and e-test. And long story short, the dealer was responsible to put a $4,000 engine in the car because they failed to disclose the engine was not going to be working very much longer with a blown head on this thing. So it is. Why are you selling it to the public anyway?
We'll take a couple more questions here because I know we're running out of time. So this one's specific to the OMVIC fee. The listener said that, you know, we have said that the fee can be passed on to consumers, which is absolutely true. So there was some confusion then about including it in the all-in price. And I think that it's important that if you are passing that fee on to the consumer, then it needs to be included in the all-in price.
Right.
If the dealer doesn't pass that $5 fee on to the consumer, then it doesn't need to be included in the advertised price. Right. If the dealer isn't passing that on, then it doesn't need to be included.
And again, we, as an industry, we'd like to see it as an external disclosure, additional disclosure with taxes and licensing, but we'll see if we get what we like or want to see happen anyways, Terry.
Okay, we'll take two more quick ones. Farah, do you have to put the amount of kilometers on the vehicle in the ad?
It's not a requirement, but as a best practice, we always urge dealers to identify the kilometers and or mileage.
And let's take one last one here. If you advertise an all-in price and show a specific stock number, would you need to show quantities?
That's a good question. No.
You wouldn't have to, no. If you've got the stock number, it's clearly identifiable to that particular vehicle.
Yeah.
Well, we've come to the end of our time. First, let me thank Bob and the UCDA. Thank you very much for joining us.
Really enjoyed it, Terry. I hope we can do more of these.
Yeah,
I do too.
Yeah.
Farah, thank you. And a special thank you to all the dealers and salespeople who are listening in. I hope that you found this information useful, if not just a good reminder. And if you do have questions, that resource page, I'm going to, Sarah, if you could throw it back up for me one more time. Please write that down. If you have questions about an ad before you publish it, give these folks a shout. They're happy to help. And as I mentioned, if we didn't get your question today answered, we will get back to you with it. And
if I could, Terry, make some comments. We'd like to know whether this has been beneficial to you. It could lead to some ways of delivering this in the future. So please, if you're on right now, make a comment. Tell us what you think of it from both the industry side and the OMVIC side. We'd like to see what you think of this type of presentation.
Thank you, because that's exactly when the webinar ends, you're going to get a little pop-up. Please provide us with your feedback.
Yeah, we need the feedback. We got to get it. Yeah.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you. That wasn't bad.